Good afternoon, City of Flint. We are here at flinttalkradio.com. We are going to be bringing you this afternoon one of the candidates for the mayor of the City of Flint. We're very glad to have as our first interviewee none other than Mr. Dayne Walling, and he's agreed graciously to come and answer some of the questions. Hopefully these questions will be some of the questions that you want to have answered. Mr. Walling, thank you for coming to flinttalkradio.com.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. And as people listen along, I want to make sure that I invite you to contact me personally with any other further questions that you may have. My email is daynewalling@gmail.com. So you can always feel to drop me an email there.
Okay, thank you. Well, Mr. Walling, I think we'll start out by asking you, why do you want to be mayor of the City of Flint?
Well, this is where it all starts, isn't it? Because it takes a person with real passion and dedication and commitment to do this job. And I know that Flint, when we start working together, can do a lot more than we're doing right now. And that's what drives me every day when I wake up. You know, I have two young kids. My son Bennett is in second grade at Pierce Elementary, one of the Flint schools. My younger son's in preschool. He's 4. And I remember back to the kind of opportunities that this community offered to me when I was that age. Mm-hmm. And then as I came through elementary school and went to Whittier and went to Central and Northern. And right now, a lot of our youth in this city don't have those opportunities. And that's what needs to change. And as mayor, the way you change that, I know we're going to talk more about this, but the way you change it is we have to bring new jobs and strengthen our neighborhoods and support the schools. That providing opportunities to people means you've got to do a lot of other things to actually get to that point. But that's what drives me every day. My parents still live here in the city. My grandmother lives in the city lives in the same house in the city that my mother was raised in and went to Southwestern from. So my family is here. We want our kids to have opportunity in this community. Okay. And right now we just don't see it. You know, okay. City Hall's a mess, and that's what drives me every day is to bring some opportunities, not just to my kids, but to this whole community.
Okay. We get some sense of your commitment to the city. What would you say qualifies you to be mayor of the City of Flint? Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing, I have not been involved in the mess that's taken place down at City Hall in these recent years, and that's got to be the number one criteria, because we just cannot repeat these old mistakes. We can't fight the old battles. It's time for a change in this community, and I haven't been a part of those old problems. So that's the first thing that I want people to know about me. The other thing is I've had the opportunity to work at every level of government, including working in a successful mayor's office. Because when I got out of graduate school and my wife and I were in Washington, D.C., I went to work for D.C.'s Mayor Tony Williams. And he pulled that city with a big team of us out of hundreds of millions of dollars of debt. And there was a federal emergency manager in place. I mean, this was one of the worst situations you could imagine. And I was first in the office of the chief financial officer, and then was a part of a team of 5 individuals who were selected to raise new money for the district government. So those 5 of us raised between $20 and $30 million a year in new competitive federal funds. These aren't just the funds that just show up because you've got a certain number of residents. These were actual programs where you had to put together a partnership and a proposal, and our office coordinated all of that, not only for the city government, but for community organizations. And that's what it's going to take in this city. So I've done the city work. I interned with the U.S. Senate. I've campaigned for Congressman Kildee. I've been on the advocacy organizations. I started the Flint Club and was an executive director of that organization. So I've seen this from all the different angles, and I know that it takes a real strong mayor at City Hall to make a community really healthy.
I see.
And that's what needs to change. We've got a lot of great groups and a lot of great people in this community, but without strong leadership at City Hall, then a lot of that energy just kind of disappears.
You look too young to have all this experience.
Hey, I'm 35. I've been working my whole life. I worked my first jobs lifeguarding out at Bluebell Beach. So as soon as I turned 15, I went to work.
Yes. Well, given that background that you have, what would you say would be the 3 priorities you set for the city of Flint? If you had to rank what would be your priorities as the mayor of the city, what would you say would be 1, 2, and 3?
There's 3 priorities that go together, and no city's been successful in turning around without doing all these things. We have to bring new jobs and develop the local economy. We have to improve all of our neighborhoods through strong community plans and better community policing. And there has to be a stronger school system. And when I say that, I know my children are in the Flint public schools. My oldest son is in the public schools. But it's not just when I say that about the public schools. It's about all of the educational opportunities, because otherwise, even folks who might come to work in the city of Flint, families won't locate here if they don't feel like their kids will have a good school to go to.
That's true.
So we have to, it's preschool, it's kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade, and then it's the colleges and universities. So those are the three things: jobs, neighborhood, schools. You repeat those three words, and every day that I wake up and go to work in the mayor's office, it's going to be making sure one of those three things is getting better.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Do you have any names in mind of persons that you would bring into your administration? Have you thought that far ahead?
Well, one person who I can mention, and he's already in the position, but now Chief of Police Alvern Locke is a person who I would invite to stay in with the administration. By all accounts, he's a great police officer, and he's done a great job even in this short time in very, very difficult circumstances with the personnel cuts of making sure that our community police officers are more out in the communities, that the senior officers are also handling direct cases, and that's what it's going to take to get the work done in this community, the real public safety work. So Chief Alvern Locke will be invited to be a part of the administration, and then moving forward, I don't want to mention other names that I have in mind. He's someone who's already in that position, so I hope that he'll stay. But there's a great team of people who want to see this community succeed, and I think they have an interest in working with a person like me. So there are some other names, but this campaign has to take its course.
I see. You mentioned jobs and education. You didn't say anything about crime, and let me just throw this out as a guideline for maybe a discussion about it. Flint is now number 6 in terms of being one of the most violent cities in the country. It was 3 before this. Detroit now is number 3, and now we are down at number 6. Well, what would you say would be your way of handling that to drive those numbers down?
And I do see that police work being connected to what's happening in our neighborhood. So I may have phrased it a little differently, but it's definitely one of my top priorities. And there's 3 things that our police officers have to do. One of them is they have to wake up every day, and you hear this over and over from me, because this is about doing work. This isn't about holding a position. This is about getting work done. They have to not only respond to crime, they have to work to reduce crime, because that's the goal in this community. We don't want the paperwork to be shuffled faster. We want there to be less crime in this community, right? We want fewer victims of crime. We want fewer people choosing a life of crime. That's our number one goal. So our officers have to focus on what they can do, not just to show up at a crime scene after the fact, but with all the training that they have, with the knowledge of this community, what can they do to get ahead of that crime? If they know there's a gang-related violence in this neighborhood, then you don't just show up in that neighborhood. You go to the neighborhood where there's going to be retaliation. You have to get in front of the problem. You can't stay behind it. And that's the second point about the police have to be closer to the community. You don't get this work done shuffling the papers in the office. Yes, you've got to follow those protocols, but the officers have to spend more time, not just out in the community, but also outside of their vehicles. They may not be able to patrol every neighborhood on foot the way when we had these big police programs when I was growing up here in the 80s, but they can still get out of that car, ride a bike, walk a couple blocks, get to know some people. That knowledge and experience will then serve them in being able to reduce crime. And the third thing is that the police force can't do this alone. Public safety has to be a priority across the whole city government. And there's things that the fighters can do. There's things our code enforcement officials can do. There's things even that our cleanup work can do to identify with our men and women going through the neighborhoods, picking up the trash every week. They have a knowledge, right, of which houses people are hanging around, which blocks are drawing traffic that doesn't quite look right. And all of that needs to be combined in these neighborhood action teams. As I've proposed, organizing all of our city services around neighborhoods, keeping a log of all the citizen complaints that have come in, and then the job every week of those people who meet is to see how many of these boxes did we get checked, How many of these did we get crossed off? And then we'll make sure that all of our teams across the whole city, my neighborhood, your neighborhood, John's neighborhood here where we're taping, let's make sure that all of our neighborhoods are getting real service. And the police are integral to that.
Sounds like you have a vision.
I have a vision. I've got a plan. I mean, we just have to get in there and get this done.
We're taping this on the 15th of April, and there are these tea parties going on around the nation. And the way that dissatisfaction plays out in Flint is that we've had several. The last two mayors have had some preemptive action taken against them, as far as I recall, one mayor and then a threat to do so with the latest with Mayor Williamson. What would you do, Mr. Walling, to calm the waters down, so to speak, and to begin to give the kind of government services and be the representative of the people that would give more confidence in the leadership here in the city of Flint?
One of the keys to it is, of course, being open and honest about everything that we do. We'll have to make all this work as transparent as we can. We hear that from the federal level. Where are the dollars going? What are the programs doing to improve the community? And I'll work very hard to put as many of those documents online and make city council meetings more accessible, not just the theatrics that we see on TV, but what about the proposals that they're debating and the budget numbers? How can we make those accessible to the public online in a timely fashion? So we're not just relaxing at home, having a good laugh at how crazy the Flint City Council is. We're actually participating in the process, and the internet and other phone systems can help us do that. But the other part of it is, and I go back to what I said about neighborhoods, and we have to make sure that every part of this community is being served, because these old battles of one side of town versus another side of town, the older folks versus the younger folks, that is not going to move us forward. And that's what my generation is really working to change in this community. This and not just here, but across the whole country. This is the challenge we have to take on. We have to make sure that as mayor, the City Hall is serving this whole community in a fair and equal way. And I think the public will see that if we do it, when we do it, and then that there'll be a greater sense of patience and understanding about how hard this work is at City Hall, and not just pick these old kind of high school hallway fights.
Okay, let me play off of that question just a little bit more. I was watching a television program some months ago when they were getting ready to bring about the impeachment of the governor of Illinois. And when they stated that Illinois was, I think, number 18 on the list of states that are somewhat not practicing good government, Clarence Page, who was a syndicated columnist, said, I demand a recount. He wasn't buying that.
Yeah, he lives in Chicago, right?
So I wonder if you could look straight into that camera and tell the people of the city of Flint that you're going to run a clean, honest government. And what kind of government will you run as far as building this confidence we're talking about?
Right, I will. Citizens of Flint, I'll run a clean and honest government. And that means two things. One of them is that we're going to make sure that we share the good things that everyone at City Hall, not just the few people that I appoint, but the people picking up the trash, patrolling the streets, we're going to recognize them for the good work that they do. But I'll tell you something else, and this is being honest. We'll make some mistakes. We all do. We're all human, and the problems that we face at Flint City Hall are enormous. They may be bigger than they have ever been. So we'll be open and honest about those mistakes too. And that won't be easy, because when you put yourself out there, it means that there'll be a lot of pushback and a lot of criticism, but we're going to deal with that open and honestly. My parents were both teachers. And one thing when you are really committed to learning and to improving yourself is you have to be willing to take that criticism. So citizens of Flint, we're going to be open and honest. I'm going to want your good ideas. I'm also going to want you to send your criticism and your concerns straight to me, straight to the people who are appointed to run these departments, because we cannot do this. I cannot do this by myself. A single person is not a community. A single person is not a coalition. And that's what's going to turn this community around, is a community working together, a coalition committed to working together. And that means that even though we disagree, we're going to have to stay in conversation.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you're saying that you will be running an honest government. how would you run an open government? How would it be open and accessible to the citizens of the city?
So two important things. One is for the people that I appoint. Well, let me back up before we get to the appointments, because we need to talk about our strategies and our vision, and then we talk about the people who we're hiring and paying to get that work done. So we'll, once I'm in office, we'll have a community, citywide citizens planning effort, and that'll produce neighborhood plans for every part of this community. We'll put those neighborhood plans together into ward plans. We'll put those ward plans together into a citywide plan. That'll identify our top priorities. I talked about jobs and neighborhoods and schools. We talked about public safety and other issues. Each neighborhood is going to have their own list of those priorities. One neighborhood may be more interested in public safety improvements. Another may be more concerned about a school. So each neighborhood has to have a chance to list their top 3, 4, 5 priorities. And they're not all going to be in equal order across the city. So each neighborhood will have that plan with its strategic priorities, but it'll also have a list of specific action items that we know we can accomplish within the first 100 days, within the first year, within the first 2 years. These are what some people call benchmarks. This is the work that actually gets done, and you know it's done because you can go out and you can see it.
Yes.
That sidewalk got repaired. That light and stop sign that people have been concerned about, that got fixed. Those are the immediate action items that we can take. Those lots that need to be cleaned up, they're either cleaned up or they're not cleaned up. Right? You can go out and you can see what's done. So every neighborhood will have those plans, and then we'll put together the citywide plan on top of that. Now, I know we're getting into a lot of details here, but this is the real work of City Hall.
No, that's very good, though.
And then every appointee will have a report card. And they'll be charged by me with a set of objectives that they have to achieve. We'll talk about those every week. These individuals will either achieve those objectives or we'll find somebody who will achieve those objectives, because mayoral appointees can come and go at the mayor's pleasure. So you're either getting work done or you're looking for work somewhere else. And that's is not friends and family plan here. This is show up and get work done for this community. And those report cards will be made available publicly on an annual basis.
Wow.
And the third thing is that citizens will be given all kinds of different opportunities to give input and feedback. Once a year, every person who pays a City of Flint water bill will be given a evaluation form for the city government. Wow. You're already paying postage on that water bill, so all you need to do is fill out the form and stick it in that same envelope and send it back or bring it down to the Citizen Center, and we'll track all those concerns by ward. And then these ward teams will be responsible again for going down through that list, and we'll find a way. We'll work with the technology experts to get those neighborhood plans online, get the action items online, and then get the spreadsheets that show the work that's being done in each of those neighborhoods. This is the only way we know whether our tax dollars, my tax dollars, your tax dollars, are actually getting spent effectively at City Hall. Well, we've got to be able to see it line by line. It's not just about budgets. It's not about press conferences. It's about what work is getting done in this community.
I see. I don't think I've ever heard that before in terms of having that kind of report card. Is that something unique to your campaign? Or is
it's something that I want to do here in Flint. No one has talked about it here, but I can tell you I saw it work in Washington, D.C.
I see.
And there were, when you walked into a department, the water department, the transportation department, there was a big poster up on the wall, and it showed those criteria. And without that, it's all just personalities, right? It's just I like you or I don't like you, or someone else likes you or doesn't like you. But that doesn't move the community forward.
I see.
It has to be about, are you getting your job done or not?
A report card for government.
That's right. So every mayoral appointee will have that report card. I haven't quite figured out what my report card is going to be, so if you have an idea on that, maybe the report card just comes at election time, whether you get enough votes to get reelected.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question about some of your political heroes and heroines. Everybody has their own set of personalities that they have admired in different processes. And in the political process, who are some of the people that you would point to as ones that you admire and would like to emanate some of the things that they stood for in the political arena?
Well, let me start with a couple of the the national and international figures that I think a lot of people are familiar with. I had an opportunity when I was in graduate school to spend a summer in South Africa. And that was when that country was coming out of its transitional government and was electing its permanent government. And there is no better example in my mind of real radical positive change. By radical, I mean just really going to the root of the problem, not extreme kind of ideas, but going to the root of the problem, was Nelson Mandela and the movement that he led in South Africa. Here at home, in this country, I had always admired U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone. He was from Minnesota, one of these great Midwestern progressives. He had beaten his Republican opponent with only $1 out of every $10 that his Republican opponent had. I mean, this is a person who just knocked on doors and talked to communities and did it grassroots. And then he went in, and even in the difficult early days of that Iraq War, where there was so much misinformation about terrorism and what the U.S. military response should be. He was one of the few U.S. senators who actually voted against that first Iraq War, and he was facing election in that fall of 2002. Now, we had just moved to Minnesota. We went from D.C. to Minnesota and then back here to Michigan. And he died tragically in a plane crash, unexpectedly, and it was just a disaster. It was an accident, and he wrote a book called Conscience of a Liberal, and I've studied not only his ideas but how he's won campaigns. So those are a couple people that I really look up to, and I've tried to learn a lot from personally at the national level.
I see. Anyone locally that comes to mind?
Well, my first campaign was summer of 1998 with our own congressman here, Dale Kildee.
Okay.
I didn't grow up in a political family. My parents certainly were voters, but they were teachers, and we didn't spend time as a family dropping literature or stuffing envelopes the way some people tell stories of campaigns. And I went to work first as a volunteer for Congressman Kildee's 98 reelection campaign, and then had the opportunity to be his Genesee County field coordinator for a couple months. And that time watching him and the level of trust and integrity that he has is really something that I'm still learning from today. So I have great respect for Congressman Kildee and how he's handled himself through so many of these difficult votes that they're having to take. But he's always on the right side of this community, that perfect balance between being open and honest and listening, but also having his own moral compass and his own conscience. And that's something that I hope to follow. Well,
let me ask you then, you stated some of your international, national, and local heroes in the political arena. We can tell a lot about a person by the kind of music they listen to.
Right. On a lighter subject, right?
Lighter subject. Let me ask you about some of your musical icons and who are some of the musicians that you like.
Well, this is something that's going to give my age away too. But I was in second grade when I first heard Run DMC, and that turned me on to this whole world of rap and hip hop, and that led me into rhythm and blues and soul music, and then to jazz, and now I'm back to listening to some classic rock and the old country Mississippi Delta blues. I have a really diverse interest in music. I love music, and the whole gamut. And when I'm in the car, I don't have any problem putting on CK 105 and listening to the latest pop hit, because hey, that's good music too. I don't get into the new versus the old, and music was better then than it was now, or hey, it's all great music. This is people expressing themselves. But I do when it's late at night, if I want to come back to something that's my absolute favorite, and I'll turn on some of that classic jazz, and this is great American music. Jazz was invented here in this country, and we're still the best at it of anywhere in the world. And it's amazing how so many different kinds of musicians from so many different backgrounds can come together and come up with these great, these great harmonic these songs.
You mentioned you were in South Africa.
Yeah.
I was there in 2007,
Okay.
and one of the things I was really amazed by was how much of this music that we have here in this country was in that part of the world, and how it was in other parts. I went to other parts of Africa and saw that this musical flow that we have is exported throughout the world, and Africa certainly is emulating a lot of it. Is there any group? I didn't hear you say Elvis Presley. I was kind of surprised you didn't mention Presley. What do you think about Elvis Presley?
I mean, Elvis Presley's all right. I haven't listened to too much Elvis Presley. I'd say a little bit more in the jazz vein than the rock, but I listen to it all. And you're so right about how our culture has gone all across the world. And one of the things that has to change here, as I think about the 21st century, is as America, we have to bring some of that culture from other places into our community. And we can't be afraid of learning to speak 2 or 3 languages or exposing our kids to things outside of this local community, because this is now it's a global village, and that's the economy is part of that, but the culture. And people who can figure that out are going to be able to do well for themselves, and they're going to be able to succeed in life. And that's what we want from our kids. We especially want them to come back home and to have opportunities right here. Now, that's what I want my children to be able to do, what I've been able to, which is get a great education here, go to Michigan State, work in some other places, but then come back home. Yeah, come back home.
Okay. Well, we are getting to somewhere around the closing of the program. Let me run by you one last question, then I'll give you a chance to say what you want to the listening audience. You're talking about your political icons, and you mentioned Mandela and Paul Wellstone.
Right.
And I'm kind of interested also, not just in your political. I think the audience like to know some of your books, some of the things that you read when you want to relax, for example. What are you interested in knowing, and what kinds of books are you interested in interrogating and getting an understanding from? Well,
this is where I don't tend to read as much of the fiction that's available right there at the grocery store, at the convenience store. If I really want to check out, I'll watch some TV instead. I'll watch some reality shows on MTV or American Idol or old reruns of Everybody Loves Raymond or something. But when I read, I want to really engage my mind. And for that, I read a lot of American history. I read a lot about the Civil War, about Abraham Lincoln. I mean, talk about somebody who made incredibly important decisions for this country and really changed the course of this country's history. He was a person who did it. So I've been reading a lot about Abraham Lincoln and American literature, just whether it's poetry, the essays, the whole list. I collect American kind of literature and history books, and that's you just can't get enough of it. There's so much to know about this country, but Abraham Lincoln, that's something I've been coming back to a lot. And in fact, it was just a couple days ago, I talked with the local resident, a neighbor here in Flint, as I was going door to door, and he told me about stories that his great-grandmother had told him. She died when he was 21. She was about 106 years old when she passed, and she was 9 years old, hiding under a bed when Sherman's army, marched through Atlanta and burned part of that city down. And you think, wow, that's and his son was at Flint Central not long after I was. So 5 generations. Think about where we've come from the time of Abraham Lincoln's presidency to where we are now. So, hey, Flint's problems look big to us, and they feel big. They keep me up awake at every night. I know they're keeping a lot of other people up at night about what's next, where's this community going. But look, we can get through this, and with the right ideas and with good leadership, we can come out stronger than we went into it. And that's I'm trying to look for those lessons, back through history of people who have been able to do it.
Would I be reading you correctly to describe you as an optimist?
Yes, I am an optimist. You have to be an optimist in this line of work. But I'm a realist too, right? Because at the end of the day, that optimism doesn't pay the bills. You got to have some income.
It's been good talking with you, Mr. Walling. Let me give you 1 minute to tell the viewers and the listening audience what you would want to say, anything you want to say in the last closing minute.
Well, thanks again for the time, and thanks to Flint Talk for this public service of informing this community. I hope that as you go make your decision on Tuesday, May 5th, about who you vote for, that you understand that whether you disagree with me on a point or two, that I'm 100% committed to this community. I'm 100% loyal to this community. I'll build a great team of people who will wake up every day and go to work for you. You'll have an opportunity to set the strategies, to lay out the priorities, and to define the action items that we will work on for you. This will be your city hall. It won't be about Dayne Walling. This election is not about me. It's not about you by yourself. It's about all of us and what we can do together. So let's be there together with each other Tuesday, May 5th. I'm asking for your support and for your vote. And even if we happen to be on the other side of this, let's commit to each other that we will all be here for this community and help move it forward.
Okay, there you have it, residents of the city of Flint. This is Mr. Dayne Walling, who is a candidate for one of 6 candidates for the office of mayor. We are doing 6 programs, hoping to bring all of the candidates to you where you can make a wise choice on the primary election day. Please stay tuned for that. And I want to thank Mr. Walling for coming in and being the first of our guests for for that particular office. Again, thank you, Mr. Walling, for showing up, and really enjoyed your conversation.
All right, thank you.